In Truth and in Spirit Well of Worship Fellowship. In Truth and in Spirit is normally abbreviated as iTiS. iTiS Well of Worship. So if you've received an invitation with those letters, yeah, it's pronounced iTiS. Some people pronounce it as ITS. No, it's iTiS Fellowship. So this is our Monday session where we tackle questions from the Bible, questions about God, questions about society, but from a theological angle, questions about life, about marriage, about sex, about, you name it. Apart from politics, which we reserve for some of our Thursdays. So if you like some politics, typically we do the last Thursday of the year, rather of the month, sorry. Yeah, we kind of wrap up the whole month politically in just not just here in Uganda where we're based, but also East Africa, Africa at large, and of course the rest of the Western world. So yeah, but for Monday is purely for Q&A. So if you're listening to this and you have a question, feel free to forward it to me, the moderator. Or even better, you just join in every Monday on Zoom. The Zoom link is the same. The meeting ID doesn't change. The passcode doesn't change. So feel free to join in any Monday between 6 and 8 p.m. That's East African time. Yeah, we'll be happy to have you. Welcome everybody here. Welcome, of course, the Christians, the religious people, the non-religious, the doubters, the agnostics, the atheists. Welcome everybody, because we believe conversations about this God who we've all never seen are very important. But of course, here we are unapologetically Christians. That's the worldview we hold. Yeah, and we are not necessarily here to convince you, but at least to make you appreciate where we're coming from with our worldview, which is Christianity. So welcome aboard. It's another Monday. I have some questions already from two people online. Let me start with you, Pedson, and then I'll go to Francis.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Mine is a long question. I just pray you just forgive me, but it's about the death and the resurrection, and mainly on the resurrection. But there are so many questions under the resurrection. Now, when you read the four Gospels, all of them have the account of Jesus' resurrection, but there are things I want to ask. One is that when you look around, when you read the Gospels, I think most of them, I read Matthew, I read Luke, and I read John. I didn't read Mark. You see all of them mention that this happened to fulfill the gospel. For example, they did not break his legs because the scriptures say his legs were not broken. So it was done that the scripture could be fulfilled. This was done so that the scripture could be fulfilled. As if this was like a script that was being followed in whatever is being addressed. So I want to understand the person who is writing, is he trying to convince people to understand that actually this one that is dying had been prophesied before, or it was these guys went and read what was existing and they wanted to fit in this same person. I'll give an example. The Muslims claim that Nabi Muhammad is the one that Jesus promised, because when Jesus was going, he promised that he's going to send us another messenger, and they have it in their teaching that Muhammad is the one that Jesus promised. And when they are convincing you, you can think that it is actually probably true. So that is the first one, where every gospel is saying this was so in order to fulfill the scriptures. If time allows, I can quote the scriptures. Number two, we are seeing a Jesus who is hungry. Post-resurrection, he asked them in John, said, you guys, don't you have anything to eat? Seems I'm hungry. And they gave him something to eat. So we are seeing a Jesus, a resurrected Jesus who is still eating earthly food. That is the second question. Now, the third one is when Mary met Jesus, at the tomb. I think she was the first woman or the first person to meet. Jesus told her, do not touch me because I have to first go to heaven and I get an approval. Now, we have been learning that
An approval?
Jesus,
Is that so?
yeah, he said that you cannot touch me. Sorry?
I think you'll help us with the actual scriptures, but just go ahead with your
I'm
question.
going to get the actual scriptures. Yes, he said, you cannot touch me. I have to first go to heaven and then I get an objection. Then the last one is people didn't know this guy after he had resurrected. When you read one starting from that part of Mary, Mary sees when Mary goes to the tomb, Mary sees Jesus and is asking that person, thinking that this is a gardener. He's like, man, where have you taken my Lord? Eh? Show me where you've taken my Lord, please. And this is someone who had just died 2 days ago. So Mary, the person who had moved with Jesus, doesn't seem to know Jesus. He's asking him, thinking that this is a gardener. We also see another account where Jesus walks with 2 men on a road. I think they're going to Damascus, something like that. Then these guys are they're just talking how Jesus was killed and all that. He joins them, he talks with them for a long distance. They also don't know him. Then the one that is actually very confusing is these guys, when Jesus left, of course that was also going to be another question. He kept around, I think he kept coming, meeting these guys, and then he would go. That is in John. But these guys go back to to fishing. Now, when they are fishing, they fish the whole night and there's nothing. Then he tells them, cast your nets. But it takes them time to realize that actually the one who is telling them to fish again is Jesus. So I would expect that someone that you've been with for a long time, even his voice, even his word, why would it take them a long time to realize that this is who? This is Jesus. Let me stop there for now. So I hope you've captured my 3 questions. Then I can be looking for the
They're actually
scriptures.
4. They're actually 4. What you can do is just find out the scriptures in the meantime. I've made a note of them.
Okay.
This is quite a question. Gospel Ninja.
Let me get
Okay.
the scriptures.
Okay, let me get Francis's questions as well. And then we'll see which one to begin with. Francis?
My questions are to do with polygamy versus monogamy. And they spring from an observation, a self-observation, and also an observation of other individuals involved in this marriage institution. And one is monogamy is scientifically backed? I'm looking at
What do you
science
mean?
in physiology, the physiology of a man, and the whole science around a man's sexuality and orientation towards sexual partners. And are we created? Are we scientific? Are we as scientific beings meant to engage with only one sexual partner as men? Are we supposed to have only one wife scientifically before I even look at theology, the theology of it all? And my question springs from the fact that from a personal observation of myself and from a little research that I've done with a few couples that I've known for years, ranging from 7, 8 to 15 to 20 years, the ones I know intimately, the men, including myself, we tend to struggle with one partner. Even those who have one partner are in the continued struggle of limiting themselves and constraining themselves. Actually, I'll call it constraining themselves or ourselves, if I'm one of them. So are we, in that case, are we scientifically designed to have one partner? Two, is
this is for the men, right?
For the men, yeah. I'm looking for the men. I don't know about women. For the
Okay,
men.
number two.
Then is it a Christian, theologically, is it a Christian theological requirement for a man to be monogamous? As a Christian, am I theologically required to have only one wife?
By theological, you mean biblical?
Biblical, yeah.
Okay, to be monogamous. Wow. Okay.
Yeah, those
of course,
are my questions.
Pastor Sempa last week was in the parliament. I hope you followed that story. He was actually advocating
I followed it.
For polygamy, even for Christian men. He has his reasons. I didn't quite listen to his reasons, but at least I saw the headline that he was there and he was actually advocating for it. I think his appeal was to African culture, though. That as African men were always been polygamous and so on and so on. Yeah. So
His appeal was both on African culture and practice, current practice of men. He was looking at even his pastors who are struggling with monogamy and churchgoers in their churches, in Pentecostal churches who are struggling with monogamy. So that was his. I remember reading his reasoning. It was based on that.
Yeah.
And basically, those are my questions.
Okay, so yeah, I've taken note of those as well. Gospel Ninja Peterson's questions are coming up shortly. If you can give me just a minute, I'll put them in the chat. I hope you'll understand the way I've captured them, my summary. But I could repeat them where they're not clear. Yeah, so basically, Peterson is asking, if I may repeat, it's a series of questions, 4 of them. His questions about the death and the resurrection of Jesus. The first question is, what does in fulfillment of the scriptures mean? These guys, they used to quote it frequently. As the scripture said, in fulfillment of the scriptures, basically Jesus' death and resurrection, were they just following a script? Or if you like, was it just a movie? Okay. So that was the first question. The second one was about post-resurrection, that is after resurrection. It is quoted somewhere, I think you said in John. Peterson, you'll help us with the actual scriptures, that Jesus was actually hungry after resurrection. So how can a God, especially a resurrected one, be hungry still? Okay, this is post-resurrection. The third question was about don't touch me until I go to heaven. I think, Peterson, there's a humorous way you put that. Basically, don't touch me until I get what? I get instructions, or I don't remember the actual wording he used. Basically, what did that mean when he said, "Don't touch me until I go to my Father," or something like that? Okay. And then number 4 rather, after resurrection, people who had previously been with Jesus couldn't seem to recognize him. He has given 2 examples of, I think, Mary, who first came to the tomb, and then later on the road to Emmaus when he appeared to those 2 gentlemen, and still they couldn't recognize him, as well as the fishermen. So was it really that bad that Jesus couldn't be recognized even by his voice or even by his face? Had he changed? And so on and so forth. So those are the questions. Beinempun, I don't know if you've got them. I see you've changed devices. Usually when you change devices, you lose the chat. I hope you still have them, but I can repost them. Yeah. So Beinempun, are you there? Peterson, you want to clarify further before he comes?
No, you're right. You're right.
I was getting the scriptures, but it's okay. His own, he can answer.
No. You need to give us the scripture
Okay, give us the
where-
scripture. It will help
for
so,
the
for context, especially.
The
Okay,
particular
now,
one is
the one,
for Mary when he said, "Don't touch me."
hey,
The one for
okay.
that one I would want to read it. I'm just thinking. Wait a minute, because it wasn't going anywhere. It wasn't going to heaven per se. But you first give me the text. I was changing. I was struggling to change gadgets. Now I'm done. I'm sorted.
Hey, okay. Okay, now the one of, I can start with the one of food. It is
Yes.
Luke
was hungry.
chapter, Luke chapter 24, verse 40. Luke chapter 24, verse 40. The heading says Jesus appears to his disciples, but verse 40 says, I'm reading from the Good News. He says, he said this and showed them his hands and his feet. They still could not believe. They were full of joy. They are full of joy and wonder. So he asked them, do you have anything to eat? They gave him a piece of cooked fish, which he took and ate in their presence. So that is the one where we see Jesus eating post-resurrection. Then about Mary, the one of Mary is well, it's actually common, but we can read John chapter 20, verse 17. He says, do not hold on to me, Jesus told her, because I have not gone back to the Father, but go to my brothers and tell them that I'm returning to him, who is my Father and their Father, my God and their God. But of course, when you read the other Gospels, I think it was Matthew, which says, do not touch me. This is John. Then I don't know which other one you want the reference. The other example was on the people not recognizing him. When you read John chapter 20, 21, it's a long scripture, but he tells them to cast their nets. They cast their nets, they fish, and then they then even Luke chapter 23. Luke chapter 24, verse 13, he's walking with these two gentlemen. They also can't recognize him and they walk for a long distance. Then Mary also, I think this is Matthew, Mary meets him in the garden and is conversing with him, thinking that he's a gardener, yet he's Jesus. And this is Mark chapter 20. Okay, let me be looking for this one. Let me be looking for the one of the other version of Mary and Jesus.
Great. I think we will go one by one. The fulfillment one. You asked, is it scripted? Is it that someone has written this one first and then gone backwards in order to justify what they are writing many years later? And on the contrary, because these are things that have been, the Old Testament was there many years before the New Testament. In fact, the number of years between the Old Testament and the New Testament, for you in the Bible, it's just a matter of flipping a page. But it's 430 years of darkness or silence, as people would call it. Have you heard about that? That between Malachi and Matthew, there is 430 years, over 400 years. So by the time the New Testament is being written, the Old Testament was already complete. So the question could be twofold. It could be as if someone has read the Old Testament, and they're coming up with a New Testament that affirms or justifies the Old Testament. Or someone is writing the Old Testament coming from the New Testament because they want to affirm the New Testament. I hope I've not said anything confusing there. So the language of this was done, this was said to fulfill what the scriptures said, because for them, the law and the scriptures were that Old Testament. And though for us today, the scriptures are the entirety. But what do they mean? Because these were already things, those are things that were already said. For example, the writer of Hebrews will say, for many years and in many times, our God spoke to our forefathers through the prophets, but now he has spoken by his son. What does that? It's a record of saying that he spoke in the past. What is the record of what he said? It is what we have in the Old Testament. And oftentimes there is, and thus the Lord said to so and so a prophet. Among the many things that you see, especially about, because everything in the Old Testament points to Jesus, whether you like it or not. It's not far-fetched, but everything in the Old Testament, or Jesus is a fulfillment of the story that you wrestle with in the Old Testament. So when you see Jesus, there are many things. Everything you go back to the Old Testament you wrestle with. If you see Jesus and he makes that claim, so you could still make that accusation. Does Jesus make this claim because he wants to justify the Old Testament? Or someone writes the Old Testament having seen Jesus and then comes back and writes something that points to him in order to justify or affirm who he is. The problem is that there's too much time in between to forge one of the records, or rather, especially to go backward. So the Old Testament is hard to forge because it already existed. Okay? So then you would be interrogating the New Testament or the Gospels. Why are they claiming that anything Jesus says or does or done to him is to fulfill the scriptures, which then can be amazing if it is false, that someone is just coming up with a script that justifies the other. Get the actual records of the Old Testament. What do they say? What do they point to? What do they mean? And does Jesus represent that? So in context, you chose, or at his death, his legs were not broken. Okay, his legs were not broken. But you also did not look at the other elements around his death, the price that he was bought, the type of death he dies, the fact that he does not fight back. He's like a lamb taken to the slaughter. The crown of thorns. That's not how normally everybody else was crucified. What else? The piercing. Not everybody was pierced, but it would happen. It was actually, people were pierced to check whether they were dead. And then the legs were knocked because then it would ease the struggle, okay? It would ease the struggle during someone trying to gasp to continue to stay alive, yet the crucifixion was intended to finish you off. So when the New Testament writers, anyone who says something that this that you're seeing is happening in connection with what happened in the past, you have the right to question, but you need to go back and try to collaborate the two. And when you go back to collaborate the two, you will notice that all the Old Testament prophets pointed to a Messiah, pointed to God's promised one. Of course, the Muslims will call him a messenger, but he was called a Messiah. So the Jews were actually expecting one. On record, John the Baptist asks, "Are you the one, or we should wait for another one?" Now, the one meant the one who was to be sent, God's Messiah. But what was the Messiah going to do? What was going to happen to the Messiah? Whether it is Isaiah or Hosea, whether it is Jeremiah, Daniel, Ezekiel, they point to that Son of Man that one that would change things, that one to whom things would happen, that one that would be rejected often and often. I wish I could go back and quote specific scriptures, but in particular context for the why his legs were not broken like the others, and he was left like that, is because they figured he was dead, and indeed he was dead. When they pierced his his side, and there was a mixture of blood and water, clearly that is not a living person. When you pierce anybody and they have a mixture of blood and water, of course, I don't expect you to do that to a living person. You only do that if you're testing that somebody's dead. And if that's the only means you have to use. There are other means to do that. Today, when someone has collapsed, they'll be checking of the pulse, blah, blah, blah. They didn't need to check the pulse. For them, theirs was to check if this guy was dead. They only broke legs when they were leaving. If they were leaving and you are not yet dead, they broke legs to reduce the struggle. But the fact that this guy breathed his last and said it is finished and bent and his neck fell, they pierced and they saw a mixture of blood and water dripping from him. And they knew the guy was gone. And no matter how smart he was, there's no way you act that out. Like you can't forge that. At least when they pierce you, but he didn't. Now you have to be a real movie star to pull off that. And not many movie stars can pull off that anyway. Now I'm going to leave that there, but it's you can further investigate it. They didn't need to hit his legs, but it is something that the writer needs to remember and says, wait a minute. They actually didn't hit his legs. As it was said, they didn't hit his legs, but why? Because he was already dead. Only when you are still alive did they need to hit you, so that you don't struggle. They go away, they leave you alive. Man, resurrection, crucifixion was a terrible thing, but they were very sure you would not survive it. Anyway, do not touch me until I go to heaven. No, that's not the statement. Do not cling on to me. Don't hold on to me, but go to my brothers. I've not yet gone. I'm still here. I've not yet gone to my Father. Not until I go. I don't know why the other versions say that. I don't know. But I think for me, the version I have, it says, do not hold on to me. Do not cling to me. I have not yet ascended to the Father. But go to my brothers and say to them, I'm ascending to my Father and to your Father and to my God and your God. And she went and told them, and which was very important. Jesus' resurrected body was scary. But also, if you've lost a dear friend, any of you that have lost loved ones, if you've lost a dear friend, and 2 days later, this person shows up, especially not in the same kind of a body that is the same, but not as the way you knew it. So the many examples we have seen from the Gospels, even when he shows up to them when they are fishing and asks them if they have caught any fish, do they have anything? The other one in John, he actually prepares breakfast for them and they eat. The question about him eating is a good one. I think it's one of my favorites about the resurrection because it affirms a bodily resurrection. It affirms that this was not a spiritual resurrection. It is a bodily resurrection. And of course, later on, you see Thomas coming back to touch the wounds and blah, blah, blah. Again, it affirms a bodily resurrection. A man you saw eating again, I think it's okay. You can say, wait, I even saw him eating. If you didn't see him eating, you cannot say whether it was real, it was bodily. And the promised, or the resurrection that he promised was a bodily one, not a spiritual one, where you say, by the way, they killed him. But that guy, they didn't kill him. He rose and disappeared from them. For us, we saw him in a heavenly body, and then he went away. Okay? What you'll be doing is affirming a hallucination or something of that nature. But when you've seen him eat, or when you've touched the wounds like Thomas did, then there is an affirmation of a bodily resurrection. Could they recognize him? Why were they scared of him? I think it is normal even you and I would be scared. First of all, our first response would be fear. Walking on the road to Emmaus and not recognizing even his voice, to the point of asking him, are you the new one? Are you the only visitor in Jerusalem? In such a time of grief and mourning of loss of a loved one or a person of that nature, no one was really, not many, apart from his disciples, to whom he had been very clear that he's going to be, Son of Man is going to be captured and killed by his enemies, but he will. On the third day, I will rise. Okay, so the others were not necessarily expecting that. For anyone to recognize him, it was going to be very, very difficult to immediately say, isn't that the guy they killed? Especially when they know that he was killed and buried and put in a tomb that was sealed. Be also aware, if you read the gospel stories, that there is a tension after his resurrection when the body is missing. There's a serious tension that would loom when the body is missing from the tomb. And you cannot even talk about his resurrection. You cannot claim that he rose. Of course, that's the major point of the persecution of the early church, the disciples, with them consistently insisting that they saw him resurrected. Him whom you crucified, he rose, and we saw him and we touched him. Anyway, I want to leave it there, but there are many other angles to the question you're asking. It's the resurrection is the most important piece, single piece of the gospel story, in as much as it is not isolated. You cannot talk of a resurrection without a crucifixion. But without that piece, the rest of the story falls among normal, regular stories.
Thank you, Gospel Ninja. If you're just joining in, this is iTiS World of Worship Fellowship. Today is Monday. We do a Q&A session about questions from the Bible, from life, from God, love, marriage, sex, you name it. Everybody's welcome. Welcome everybody here. Of course, we welcome the religious ones, the Christians, the Muslims, the agnostics, the doubters, the seekers, the atheists. Everybody's welcome. Not because we are going to convince you, but because we are confident in our worldview, which is the Christian worldview, unapologetically confident that it gives the best explanation for life and so on. Yeah, so please, if you feel like having a discussion with us, welcome every Monday via Zoom, 6 to 8 p.m. The Zoom link stays the same, doesn't change. In case you can't make it, we upload these recordings to YouTube. Our YouTube channel is iTiS World of Worship Fellowship. Feel free to go and listen in and agree or even disagree. Welcome all feedback. Yeah, we are tackling a series of questions from Pedson. This one is for the benefit of Priest Isaiah and Ariong Tom. Pedson asked a series of questions about the death and also the resurrection of Jesus. His questions are mainly from the first four books of the New Testament. And the first question was, there's a lot of reference to as it is written, as the scripture says, depending on which translation you're reading, in fulfillment of the scriptures. So he seemed to wonder whether this was not just any script, like how you have a script for a movie or a play. So was Jesus just following a script really? Can we really take the resurrection seriously? That was, and of course, he talked about the breaking of legs as well, which Gospel Ninja has responded to. So was it a script Jesus was following because it was already written? Okay, that's the first question. The second question is about after resurrection, Jesus meets some people and is actually hungry, asks for food. How do you explain that in a resurrected Jesus as getting hungry? We saw him, of course, before he died, being hungry and all that. But how do you explain that post-resurrection, all right? And then there's a verse. I'm going to put all these verses in the chat, by the way. They're already there, but of course, when you join in, you can't see them. There's a place where he met Mary and told her, do not touch me until I go to my father. Go and tell my brothers about the good news. And so why didn't Jesus want to be touched anyway? Okay, that was the third question. And then the fourth one is many people who had been with him did not recognize him. So many examples. Mary, who referred to him as just a farmer, he was actually asking after what happened to this Jesus of ours. Okay, and then the road to Emmaus when he met those two gentlemen, and they still didn't recognize him, not in body or even in voice. And then, of course, when he appeared to the disciples as well, when they couldn't catch any fish, and he, told them to cast their nets, and then they were able to. So he was just wondering, why didn't these guys recognize Jesus? If I've been here with Isaiah all these years, can't I just hear Isaiah's voice and know, hey, this is Isaiah? So what is happening? So those are a series of questions Peterson gave us. I don't know if you'd like to attempt. Isaiah, I don't know if you can even hear me, by the way.
Yet I'm here. I have just arrived. I'm here and I've been listening in.
Yeah, the Gospel Ninja made an attempt. I don't know if you listened to him as well. I don't know if you'd like to add something or, beef up whatever he said.
No, I did not. I did not listen to Raymond.
Oh, that's a pity.
Mm.
It's a big pity. Because I thought you would. Anyway, what would you say very briefly to Peterson's 4 questions?
Well,
So what does this whole thing in fulfillment of the scriptures, as it is written, as it was said, is it just a script? Is it just a movie? Secondly, how can Jesus be hungry after the resurrection? And then thirdly, how comes people could not recognize him? People he had been with all these years, by voice, by body, and so on and so forth. Just briefly.
yeah, the first question is an experience that comes from the context of Jesus of Nazareth. The community within which Jesus ministered and lived is the Palestinian community, whose major religion was Judaism, and the writers of the first 4 books in the New Testament intended that they communicate to their audience that our rabbi that we followed was not an ordinary rabbi, but one who actually fulfilled what is in our books. And by our, they meant the Jewish books. So they had a burden to prove that the prophecy that
Always
was
keep going up and down. I don't know why. High, then low, then high. I don't know why.
Maybe it is my network. I don't know.
Anyway, keep going. We'll see probably to stabilize.
So they had a burden to prove that the Jesus of Nazareth they followed as their rabbi fulfilled most of the prophecies written in the Jewish books. So the as it is written is in reference to the then existing what you would call the Bible, and because even the Jews anticipated a Messiah, so the as it is written is in reference to that anticipation of the Messiah. So basically, moderator, that is the whole thing. You need to understand the anticipations of the Jews. Were there some anticipations? Were there some prophecies that were yet to be fulfilled? Because even Jesus in his life, when he entered into the synagogue, even the temple, when he asked for the scroll, he read from the place of Isaiah, and Isaiah was talking about the coming Messiah. And then after I had read that, he said, those words have been fulfilled today because I'm the one that is being talked about. So the as it was written is not an invasion of the disciples after the death of Jesus, but even before the death of Jesus, even Jesus himself made claims that all the scriptures, at one point he told them that you search the scriptures, not knowing that even those scriptures testify of me in his existence. Then also you need also to remember that when he was being crucified, one of the charges on his charge sheet was that he exhibited or presented himself as the Messiah, therefore calling himself God himself. So as it is written is in reference to what Jesus had done and what he had said, and what was predicted in the anticipations of the Jewish writings. So that's how I can go briefly on that first question.
Okay, Peterson will obviously come back later and tell us whether he's happy, but for now, just keep going. The second one is about being hungry. How can a resurrected Jesus, who's God, be hungry?
Well, the hungry, first of all, the question, how can a resurrected Jesus be hungry? Let me start from the angle of the Christian view, because Christians insist that Jesus was a God man, and then we normally wonder why God would be hungry. But as a human being, because we believe that the incarnation means that he was fully God and fully man, so those two natures actually acted, but one of the natures was limited in the incarnation, and the limited nature by authority was that divine nature. It was limited. So when he died, so you need to understand what we Christians mean by the resurrection, because it is what happens in the resurrection is a transformation of the body. That is what happens. I don't know whether that term is correct to use. I don't even want to use the transformation of the body. No,
What do
I
you
don't
mean?
want. Yeah, surely. What I intended is that the body that we have today decays. So in the resurrection, we are dressed with bodies that do not decay. The body that we have today is mortal. But in the resurrection, you resurrect with an immortal body. However, you need to understand that it is still the natural body with the natural propensities minus those of failure. But other activities, other whatever are happening in the body. Why? Because to ask the question, why was Jesus hungry? It is to ask that when we resurrect, shall we be eating or not? The truth of the matter is that, yeah?
Yes, that is the question.
Yes. When we resurrect, we shall be eating, because it will be this body minus sin. So it is justified for Jesus to be hungry because he still has this body minus sin. He has the resurrected body, yes, but that resurrected body the body flesh like he had. So it is just
go back there. We lost you.
Lost you for about a minute there, 30 seconds maybe.
When you ask the question, shall we eat when we resurrect? Start from there. When you ask that question.
Can Isaiah hear us?
Yes, I heard you. You
Go
can hear
ahead.
me?
Yes.
Sure. Yeah. So what I was saying is this, that the resurrection body, the difference between the resurrection body and the current body that we have is minus sin. The resurrected body are not subject to sin like the bodies that we have right now. However, the practices of that body, the behavior, and all the operations of the body, okay, are the same. Apart from
hunger is not due to sin.
Hello?
Hunger is not due to sin. That's what you're saying.
Hunger is not due to sin. Hunger is is the body asking for nutrients it is here to operate, because we are created as eating beings. That is why before the fall, the Genesis chapter 2 verse 17 warns against eating. But eating was part of the human body even before the fall. That's why they were warned, do not eat. Therefore, they were eating. So the resurrection body, we are taken back to our original body without sin. So Jesus was justified after resurrection to ask for food, because resurrected body is original body without sin. Eat. We are natural human beings. We are not supernatural. That's why I keep discouraging people from saying, I am spiritual, I am spiritual. No, you are not spiritual, you're not a spirit. You are a human being. You are body, soul, and spirit. The soul has its nutrients, the spirit has its nutrients, the body has its nutrients. So he was hungry and very justified. And hence,
So
even in the
Isaiah,
new earth, we shall be eating.
Isaiah, now can I come in now?
Yeah.
Okay. God became man for a reason, to die for us on the cross, and he died and resurrected. So what business does he have to continue being man after he has finished his mission? Or his body also demands food, even when he's in heaven, kati alikudina kati.
No. I don't want to be, because that is some of the religious teaching that he's somewhere there, he's still in the body, he will never leave the body, etc., etc., etc. Because Hebrews chapter 2 verse 14 says that because those he came to die for share in blood and flesh, him also had to share in blood and flesh, so that he could be a perfect and qualified representative of those he came to die for. 1, 2. Now, in the death, he represented us. It was in death, he was doing it for us. In the resurrection, he was also doing it for us. So, what business did he have to resurrect with the body? Because he was not doing it for himself. He was doing it for us. Now, at the point of ascension, this whole business of incarnation stops, because he has already demonstrated how we would have died if it wasn't for his death, and how we wouldn't have resurrected if it wasn't for his resurrection. But he demonstrated that we shall also resurrect with these bodies, like he resurrected with one. So that was the business, Pedson, that this God had, to demonstrate our resurrection. Because he was in the body, he had to die like a human being and resurrect like a human being, for us to be sure that we who are human beings, we can die and we will die, and yes, we die, and we will resurrect like he resurrected, and we will be dressed with new bodies like he was dressed with the new body. So that is our assurance. That is what the resurrection teaches us. The resurrection ensures and assures us that yes, we are dying. I am going to die tomorrow or the other day or next 10 years. Yeah, I will die like other people have died. But if I die with my belief in Jesus Christ who resurrected, I myself will resurrect like he did resurrect. So that is the business. So it's not that I do not believe myself that he still has the business with the body even in heaven. No, he doesn't have that, because that was an earthly mission and project tied to the cross, because the biggest events is the incarnation, the cross, and the resurrection. But the major one is the resurrection. Our major defense of Christianity and justification of our belief is the resurrection. Without the resurrection, we are preaching in vain. And we are actually even wasting time. But we are sure, because the man died as a man and resurrected as a man. Hence, I am very sure that I myself also, that is what Paul actually talks about in 1 Corinthians chapter 15. We are also convinced and sure, now that a man died and resurrected, we will also resurrect in the name of that guy that we believe that resurrected, because the power of resurrection is in his hands. Moderator, do you want to take me to another question?
Yes.
Number
That is
three.
the one about hunger. How about the one of people not recognizing him? So this new body he had without sin cannot be recognized by the old, or what? Why couldn't people recognize him even by his voice?
Yes. Now I want to demonstrate, and I'm going to use you and myself, or you and Lugorobi, because Lugorobi here, and Ryong is also here, and Bob is also here, and actually Pedson, because you are the people here on this call that have spent quite a number of years knowing each other. I want you to imagine that I died today. Today is Monday. I died today. You came to Muyenji Kachinzi, that is Chiboga district, and you laid my body. And you went through all that process. So you bury me on Tuesday. I don't know how long it will take you guys to decide to bury me, but if I die today, I guess how long will it take you? I need to know.
Continue.
So you bury me on Tuesday.
Oyagala gana kufa kiki?
So you bury me on you bury me on Tuesday. Now, when you bury me on Tuesday, that is Francis, that is Bob Enoch, that is Ariel, that is Jethro, that is Pedson. You guys drive your cars and come back to Kampala. And you know very well that the story of Isaiah is done. Okay? You mourn me, I'm done, I'm gone. You accept the fact that I'm gone. Now, you buried me on Tuesday. Now, Tuesday, Wednesday, Friday, okay? Now, on Saturday, you guys are at iTiS, you are fellowshipping. I enter the room. Now, how many of you recognize me?
That is a ghost.
Exactly. Why are you calling me a ghost? Because that's the question that you're asking me. You have to understand that the Bible, unlike other books and Christianity, and unlike other beliefs, we are realists. The reality is these are human beings. We all know that once we bury someone, it is a done deal. You cannot accuse anyone for not recognizing someone they buried 3 days ago. Okay, where do you start? How do you normalize that? And they say, hey, hi, Isaiah. It's good to see you, man. Something's wrong with you. So
the first reaction is running away.
Yes. Because the idea of why did they recognize him, that argument of how come they did not recognize, who can recognize someone they buried three days ago, even if it was your father? You wouldn't. Someone might even sound like him. But if you are mourning and you are in pain, like the guy on the Emmaus Road, those guys were mourning and they were in pain. Who has the time now to recognize? They are telling the stories of their loved one who died. So, moderator, just like you also guys agree, you cannot recognize me 3 days after my burial. You understand that they were like you. The disciples were like all of us. They are human beings. Their reality is our reality. The person's hand is up.
Someone wants to respond. Yes, Ped.
Oh, here is my challenge. And when you read John chapter 20, verse 19, Jesus had appeared to the disciples on Sunday, and here he actually told. First of all, they first called him a ghost, and then later he showed him that he was what? He was Jesus. At that time when Thomas was not there. Now, when you read John chapter 21, these guys they disintegrate. They go back to their normal what? To their works, what they have been doing before. And here he comes to them again. Remember, they had seen him in chapter 20, and he explained to them, apart from Thomas, even Thomas came and touched the hands and finally accepted. Now, chapter 21, Jesus meets them at the shore, but still they couldn't even recognize him. That is where the problem is. You saw the guy on Sunday when he resurrected. These are some days after his resurrection. Still, you can't recognize him. Why?
Now, Now, moderator and whoever is listening to me, first of all, there's a chronological fallacy because we don't know whether the events in John chapter 20 and John 21 are chronological like the chapters are. That is number one. But that is a story for another day. But let me go back to my metaphor. If I appeared in the iTiS fellowship hall and there was that kind of emotionalism, how many of you have accepted my reality that I am back? If you fail to recognize me in the iTiS hall, why would you recognize me, Peterson, at your office? Because I am a living dead.
And okay. No, okay. Do we conclude that his first appearance, these people were not convinced that the guy was back?
Exactly, they were not. That's why Thomas is asking to prove. Just like you guys, you cannot be convinced that I am back. To challenge the resurrection using that event is to challenge ourselves, because even we ourselves, we cannot believe that our dead ones can resurface. Even now, after the resurrection, now imagine for us, we doubt the presence of the dead today, even after we have the event of the resurrection. Now, these guys had nothing like that. So they were not convinced. They were doubting. This is why Thomas actually asked, let me touch to prove. And Jesus said, well, it's good, you touch, prove it's me, you guys. Everyone was in the corner. He just cornered them in the upper chamber. Why do we think that these guys failed to recognize what we would recognize? That's my challenge. We are not being fair. We're just not being fair. Moderator, the other question.
The other one, I think there's a verse where I told Mary, do not touch me. You go to my brother. Yeah, what was happening in that particular scenario?
Now, we can only ask, was Jesus being selective in who touches him? Because the point is not that he didn't want to be touched. We have seen him being touched, haven't we? We should only ask, was Jesus being selective with who touches him? That is the whole idea. Now, if a man touched him and he had no problem with that, and when a woman wanted to touch, he said, do not touch. Then now the problem is not that Jesus didn't want to be touched, because there's those who challenge the resurrection narratives, challenge that this guy was even a spirit. This guy saw a spirit, they were hallucinating, because why wouldn't he want to be touched? But we already seen that a certain man touched him. So that challenge of the guy was a spirit, he didn't want to be touched, so that people understand that this was a spirit, that challenge is dismissed because he was touched. Now, the other angle now is to ask, why didn't Jesus want to be touched by Mary? Now, to answer and respond to that question, we need to go to that account that reports that do not touch. And then we get to the plot, okay? And then we reverse that and contextualize that in the theology of the Jews and the audience right there, between women and men, and cleanliness, divinity in contrast to uncleanness. Maybe you could argue it from that angle, but you cannot dismiss the resurrection account by saying that he didn't want to be touched. No, he wanted to be touched, and he was touched. Unless if you ask now, why didn't Jesus want a woman to touch him? Or, woman is generalization. Why didn't he want a Mary to touch him? Then we investigate, who is this Mary that Jesus didn't want to touch? What does it mean? Does the original text say do not touch? So we go into those dynamics. But for now, since the question was, because I know the question is against the resurrection accounts and events and reports, we qualify Jesus to have resurrected bodily by the act in the room when Thomas himself touched and felt. And then we qualify the bodily resurrection of Jesus Christ when the guy in the body asked for food to eat. So for me, that's how I can.
Those events are in John chapter 20. In my version, New King James Version here, it says, "Do not cling to me." Some versions say touched, but this NKJV seems to say, "Don't cling to me."
Because do not touch it.
Yeah,
because do not. What is the verse? Let's look for the verse.
Verse 17. John chapter 20, verse 17.
John chapter 20, verse 17.
Then NIV says, "Do not hold on to me." The other one is, "Do not cling to me." Then there's, "Do not hold on to me." That is NIV. And another one, Amplified, is the one which normally has those 20 things to describe one thing. Let me just see.
Switch off the light here.
Do not hold me. This one, Amplified, says, "Do not hold me." Anyway, just John 20:17 is what we're looking at.
Now, they are trying, both of them, both of those versions are trying to translate the Greek word apto. That is what they are trying to translate. Apto, that's what I see in my Greek version. Apto. Now, apto can be either do not touch me, okay, like in Acts chapter 28 verse 2 and Luke 25:55, I guess, or it can be do not take hold of me, or do not cling to me. So in other words, either way, was Jesus against being touched, or this woman had held him so that he doesn't leave her again? But this whole thing of touching, it's not. Because that touching again has also another, that apto again can also be used in the context of having a sexual intercourse. For instance, like in 1 Corinthians 7:1. So the whole thing is not touching. That's why I was arguing that since Thomas touched, the problem was not Jesus being touched. No, it wasn't. We just have to investigate what was Mary doing, because we very well know that it was these women who actually did not even leave the grave. They were always there. So it doesn't surprise us if Jesus surfaces again and the woman holds her not to leave her again, depending on how you
Okay.
study it.
Thank you. Those who have just joined in, let me just quickly bring you up to speed. Benebuno, give me a minute. I'm going to give you a chance. Yeah, we are attempting questions asked by Pedson, a series of questions, in fact, about the death and the resurrection of Jesus. The first question was, why does especially the New Testament keep referring to the Old as it is written in fulfillment of the scriptures and so on and so forth? Was it just a script he was following? That was the first question. And then the second question was, why would Jesus be hungry after the resurrection? I think it's in John somewhere where he asked for bread. You know, why would the resurrected God be hungry? Before death, yes, but why after the resurrection? And then what we just answered, the last, was the whole thing of do not touch me, do not cling me onto me, do not hold me. Why would he say that? And then the one before that is, why wouldn't people recognize him? People who had been with him for all the years, they could not recognize him. That's what we're attempting to answer. So Beinem Puno, please come now. Are you there?
Hey, I was muted, Kumbe. Lavayo. Yes, I'm glad I'm back. Kakati, yes, thank you very much, Isaiah. And I only wanted to hint to well, give a footnote to the whole touching, clinging, or what is going on there, friends. I mean, Jesus having the woman it's in a conversation. There's a conversation going on. At first, when she arrives, she thinks it's a gardener. And she asks, "Where have you taken my Lord?" And Jesus calls out her name, and she recognizes, "Wait, this is my Lord. That's his voice." She didn't expect him to be alive anyway. She thought he was dead. The purpose of being there was not to check on him and say hi to him, but rather or touch him per se. But as they would have done was to, to anoint his body, his dead body, as they used to do in their custom. No, we don't normally do that here. People do certain things like when you go to dig around a grave, but that one you normally do after a long time. So people do that. But here, the people went to the grave and they anointed the body. And it was within time before it would begin smelling so bad that they wouldn't even want to get close to it. Even though we are also told that another lady, earlier on in Luke chapter 7, yes, anointed Jesus's feet, his body, we would say, his feet with oil that was very expensive, and there was contention. And then he said, what she has done is very important for the gospel story. Okay? But that is to remember that Jesus did not need that anointing, in as much as for them they had come to do it. You would say that God draws them to the tomb that they may see an empty tomb and also see him resurrected. And then what he does to her tells her, "Go tell my brothers." It's important that she goes and tells the story. All right. It's less like at the cross, they're crying because he's dead. And he says, "Do not cry for me. Cry for yourself and for your children." Okay. So he says, "Do not cling onto me," because it's not going to be possible anyway. And I'm imagining it wasn't going to be possible. This is a guy, you're in a room, he shows up. Okay. He didn't go through the open door. So you don't know, you can't say it's a resurrected body. And I'm trying to, whether attempting to be logical here, but the idea of him, of her touching, clinging, it was not necessary for her to do that, in as much as she may have wanted. He was no longer dead, so he didn't need to be anointed. So the anointing oil and whatever she had, the oil, the perfumes were not necessary. I could go on and on. But what is important is that Jesus draws one of his followers to the empty tomb. They find the empty tomb empty. And rather, to the tomb, they find the empty. Sorry, they're drawn to the tomb. They find it empty. And it's important that from that point, they go on to tell the story. And who are the guys who are going to be blazing it all over? They're his brothers, the disciples, whom he said, "You're no longer my servants, but you're my friends. You're my brothers." So he sends her, he tells her, "Go tell them." And in the other version of the gospel, he actually tells, I think in Mark, he tells her to tell them where they would find him. So he tells her, I think if you go to Mark chapter 16, let me go to my Bible here, and I'll end with that. Marco, Shura, okay, so Mary Magdalene, Jesus appears to Mary Magdalene, and when she went there, Mary Magdalene, from whom he had cast seven demons, and then told her, no, that's later, after he had resurrected. So go, verse 7 of Mark chapter 16, Mark 7. But go tell his disciples and Peter that he's going before you to Galilee. There you will see him just as he told you. So there he even gives an instruction of where he can be found. You understand? There he doesn't. But the goal is, go tell them. You need to go and tell the story. You don't need to hold on to me. You don't need to cling on to me. I'm not the one who needs to hear the story. The ones who need to hear the story are out there. Go tell them the story. And I could go on and on. There are people whom he healed that wanted to follow him. In other words, cling onto him. And he told them, no, go tell the story. Go show yourself to the priest. There is need to go and tell the story. And I might be including other stories here, but in this specific context, Jesus is instructing her to to do what it needs to be done rather than to do that which doesn't need to be done at that point. I'll leave it there.
Thank you. Thank you, Bainempuno. And of course, one of these days we should come and talk about why, in the Jewish culture where the testimony of women was not even taken.
That is another thing altogether.
Why would give
That's
them the good news to tell the brothers and others,
That's why
that
you
was
see
another
Peter's
revolutionary
response.
act.
Peter's response is not to go to Galilee. No. Those of you that have read the gospel story, Peter first runs to the tomb. There's no way he was going to believe a woman's testimony. He first ran to the tomb. And when he found it empty, he was like, okay, Kali, let's go where you have told us. He said he was going. But he did not just believe.
So that's another revolutionary act, which is why when you tell women not to preach, you might miss out on other good news. Anyway, that's for another. There are religions that don't allow women to. There are religions that don't allow women to be ordained and to preach, but that's for another day. Maulira malungi gava mu bashara. You can imagine that. Whose testimonies you don't take.
It's not only at the resurrection. In John chapter 4 is a beautiful record of a woman whose status is unthinkable. If you can imagine the woman in John chapter, the woman at the well in John chapter 4, whom even when they come back, they walk away. But disciples, she went to the well at the time when she could only be there alone. She had been in 5 marriages, and the one she had was not hers. Her status was. But she's the one who goes to a whole Samaritan city, the dogs. And she tells them, come see the man who knew everything about me. Could he be the Messiah? They invite him in, the entire city is changed. That was a woman, by the way. It's just
so women have been revolutionary from the word go.
You
do not deny them chances to preach. We should ordain them. These religions. Anyway. Yeah, so thank you guys. I think Petson, you're happy. We've spent quite a bit of time on your question. I have another question from my brother Francis. This one is also another revolutionary question. I think Raymond was the only one here when he was asking. Francis is asking about polygamy and monogamy. And he said in his own words, from his observations of self and other individuals around him over the years, especially the men, is it where men, now he started from the scientific angle or the naturalistic angle, if you like, were men really created to be monogamous? Because those who are monogamous, even now officially, struggle with, either inwardly or hide their other women, So he actually had 2 questions. Is monogamy scientifically backed? Is it possible for men to have only one wife or one sexual partner for that matter? Okay. And then the second question was from the Christian worldview or the biblical worldview. Is it a requirement for a Christian to be monogamous? So those were Francis's questions. Which was, you switched on your mic. Do you want to go first? Before I want to give a chance to these guys. My brother Nicholas, you prepare after Muchwe is here.
Now, the question, I would think that even marriage alone is something that is not natural. When we talk about marriage, we are talking about ownership, because what Francis is asking is that a man should marry 4 women or 5 or how many, but even that one is not even natural. A man who has 10 women will still want to maybe go with an extra one, 11th. So I think naturally we were not supposed to own things, and on top of that, even human beings. But what marriage does is that it creates that thing that when I wed, this is my woman, this is my wife, no one is supposed to touch. There are some societies which still practice like these cattle keeping communities. When you look at the Maasai, look at the Karamojong, look at the Bahima, of course now they're changing. A woman was for a community. You're there, as long as you find a spear on your hut, you move to the next hut. So if we're to talk about the natural, the biological thing,
I
then
dare find your spear on my house.
And everybody is protesting
so
already.
what I think what is disturbing us as human beings is our selfish nature. We want to own, we want to own and customize each and everything. When you own land, you want to have a land title. When you own a car, you want to have a car, because ownership. So when we talk about the natural part of sex and reproduction, then we also want to own the human beings, which I think is not the right thing. My thinking. Thank you.
Thank you. That's the naturalistic side. How about the Christian worldview? Because there are two questions. How about the Christian worldview or the biblical position on this matter?
Christianity is just a culture. It's just we adopted some people's culture. One Christianity that Isaiah said came from Judaism. Then the people who popularized it, Europeans, the Romans. So they are thinking they brought it on here to how we operate. Yeah, but for us, we can only pick from what Christianity. What we need is to pick salvation from there. Then the other things is just culture. We can operate within our means.
Thank you, Pedson. I'm trying to rush you because I see our time is rushing, and I know this is quite an emotive topic. Last week, Pastor Sempa was in the Parliament of Uganda commenting on, I think, the new marriage bill. And also one of his proposals was Christians should be allowed to be polygamous. Again, he appealed to culture in that regard. Dr. Mukwana, fresh off the PhD journey, can you talk?
Yeah, why not?
Okay, please. The only doctor in this forum. Where do you start? Okay, on this monogamy versus polygamy debate?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. The worst thing that ever happened to Africa and African Christians is a wedding. I think a wedding is the worst thing.
What do you mean by a wedding? Because the Africans had weddings also. So what do you mean?
Yes, I mean that church wedding that involves vows. That involves vows. My neighbor in Ginger is a Dutch, and he's married to one woman, and the woman tortures the man. But when I look at the man, he can't even read the atmosphere. The woman can even go away for a week. The woman can come back and even shout at him, why are you calling me? I was in a busy meeting. And the man says that he's the one that facilitates all her journeys, wherever. But because it is their culture,
a Ugandan woman or a Dutch woman also?
Ugandan woman and a Dutch man. Okay. Yes, but it is their culture to stick to one man, to one woman. So he'll die with it because it is in the blood. But for Africans, oh my God. But you don't know how many pastors are polygamous, much as they remain with one woman on the pulpit. You leave the same thing to go through. You'll be shocked. Recently, we had an outing of pastors, married pastors in Ginger from Kampala. And those big men you see were coming with very younger girls. Hey, this is my wife. And we're like, when did you wed this one? People are talking about being in marriage for 40 years, but it's coming with a girl who is not even 40 years. But you keep quiet because you don't know the things. So Christianity, I was listening to somebody who was saying that God is not bothered by how many women you get. Because Prophet Nathan asked David, that thus says the Lord, I did the A, B, C, D, F, G, but you see what you've done. And then he says, but if you had wanted another woman, your God would have given you, but not to take somebody's wife. Now, that is in the Bible. But Christians don't want to see that. Don't want to see David, don't want to see Abraham, don't want to see...
Dr. Mukwana, aren't we just justifying our failures as men using all these examples around us to kind of say, you see, so and so is doing it, so and so did it, so we can also do it? Aren't we just justifying our...
Okay, yes, partly you're right, because ideally, the ideal marriage is, and Jesus says clear, in the beginning, God created one man, one woman. The ideal marriage is the one man, one woman. That is the ideal. But that is in the world which is not broken. But in this broken world, it is not possible. So what the result of that is a hypocrisy, because you're going to find that even the ladies, even the ladies do their things, their stories behind, because men don't do it with fellow men. It is men and women. And somebody asked a question that now, if everybody is to get married, why do we have more women than men? Is it that some women are created not to get married? So if they are created not to get married, why are we having single mothers in the church? Now, that's when we are talking on a realistic basis, but people don't want reality. They want pretense.
Thank you, Dr. Mukwana. Because of time, I'll stop you there. My brother Bob, are you there? I know you're at work and sometimes you can't, but whenever you're able to speak, just let me know. I'll give you a chance. Beinepuna has dropped off. I know his stand on this subject, but hopefully he'll come back. Tom, can you talk? Can you talk?
Here is noisy.
No, we can hear you loud and clear. You keep talking.
Otera okugamba nti wendi wakutawanya.
Tukuwulira bulungi. Go ahead. Is it natural? Is it scientific for men to have more than one?
Nze siri muna science, but I am a man. It is a natural thing for a man to have more than one woman. It is a natural thing for a man to have more than one woman. Era bwe neetegereza obulamu bwange ng'omusajja, nwanagana n'ekirowoozo ky'okuba n'abakazi abasukka mu omu. It is a big fight. Era okulwanagana kuno tekuli, saagala kukugatta ku kibi nga bannaddiini abalala basobola okugamba mbu kubanga nina propensities to sin therefore kyekuusa ku ekyo. Nze ndabanga ekyobutonde. So nze ndowooza nti tekiri natural era si kya bwenkanya abasajja okubakakaatikako nti babeere n'omukazi omwomu. Si kya buntu bulamu kuyingirira ddembe lyabwe.
Ate abakazi bapaatikako omusajja omu.
I think n'abakazi baddembe okuba n'omukazi asukka mu omu. Kubanga bw'owuliriza abakazi nga boogera, bw'owuliriza abasajja nga boogera, tewali n'omu ku bo ekiri natural gyali okubeera ne partner omu. Wabula society nga bw'efaanana yaluka ekigo ku bakazi era ebagamba mmwe temuteekwa kubeera na musajja asukka mu omu. Ndowooza nti nakyo kiri unfair. Nakyo kiri unfair ssebo. Neyanza ssebo.
Wabale nnyo Tom, wabale nnyo. Isaiah. Can we justify our greed by our nature? Can you say I'm greedy by nature, and therefore it is a good reason to go ahead and satisfy my greed?
No, you cannot.
Or is greed not natural? It's a sinful, it's a bug in the system, if I may say.
No, no, you cannot justify greed and then attach it to nature, unless if we are saying that you are naturally greedy. Because if you are naturally greedy, then greed is a nature, and there's nothing wrong with greed. But as long as there's something wrong with greed, then we attribute that to abnormality. We say that it is abnormal, therefore you cannot justify what is abnormal.
As nature.
As nature, you cannot. But I don't know how that is related to what we are talking about.
Yeah, because it is in Francis's first question. He says men are naturally. From his own experience, from our experience as men, you always say woman and you feel something inside you. But then society or religion or culture, whatever, is saying you have only one. Is it scientific? That was his first question. And then the second was the biblical worldview. Feel free to tackle it from whichever angle.
Well, moderator, you and Seruvide, you have to promise us that you bring back this discussion another time, because right now the time.
Yes, our time is, but it's a promise. We'll bring it back.
Okay, fine. Now that you, our producers and moderators, have decided, then I can continue. What I can say for now is it is, if you argue that it is naturally impossible for a man to have one wife, then you have justified the argument that says that a man should have one wife.
Come again?
If you argue that it is naturally impossible for a man to have one wife, then
one sexual partner.
Yes, then you have justified the counter argument that says that it is natural for a man to have one wife. Do you guys understand the logic?
You help us.
Because you need to understand how arguments work. If men are saying that it is in nature that we have more than one wife, why is it not in nature for a man to have one wife?
Because nature produces variety. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, because nature produces variety. Number one. Number two, counter arguments. Because what the men are saying, men like Francis Rugorobi, what the men are saying, that what is natural is not wrong. That is what they are saying. That's the argument. So yes. So for me as a student of logic, I want to look at arguments in their natural state. Because for you to say that it is natural for a man to have more than one wife, you are actually saying that for a man to have more than one wife is not wrong because it is nature.
That is the argument being fronted
That is
here.
the argument, deductive argument. Maybe we should also come back here and moderate, and we teach people how to argue. Yes, and to understand arguments. You see? So men, therefore, must prove scientifically. Are we together? That polygamous is a natural phenomenon. Scientifically, and what we mean by scientifically is now dealing with nature, matter. Can that nature, for men to have more than one wife, can it be tested in the laboratory? So that we investigate
experience.
Yeah, so that no. Because you cannot have experience in a laboratory. We don't run that. Bob is here. Unfortunately, he's busy. He can tell you he's a lab resident.
Continue.
Yes. So you until that is proven in the laboratory, then we'll have to deal with how about men who have been with one wife for the past 50 years. Are they also natural? Or they are abnormal?
They are abnormal.
Or they are abnormal. Because
the normal is to have many. So those who have one, they are abnormal.
Now, you have sent us back now to the laboratory to investigate the abnormality of monogamous men, because we also have those in place. So, moderator, for me, and this debate, since you bring it back a certain day, let me leave space by saying this: monogamous or monogamy and polygamy are preferences. And they should be handled and treated as such. They are preferences. So the whole idea of mystifying these preferences in culture and religion is what brings the problem. I am a preacher of the gospel of righteousness by faith through grace alone. And I have not read anywhere that we go to heaven based on the number of official wives we have or official husbands that we have.
Elders should be of one wife.
Now, that is a job description. Thank you, moderator.
Thank you, Sebo. Becky and Mulangire. Becky and Mulangire, welcome. Our time is running out, but yeah, I'm sure you'll have one or two things to say about this monogamy debate. Maybe let me first go back to Francis before I bring in Mulangire. Francis, what are you thinking? What are you feeling about your question right now? Are you being helped anyway, or we're just... Because I think Isaiah made a good argument that these are
I think you are doing justice to the questions, the two questions, and though of course the responses have been too summarized because I think of time,
yeah, because
but
of time,
doing justice to them.
What do you think about the idea that these are just preferences? So those who, of course, majority might prefer one thing, but there are also those who can have one sexual partner for 50 years and they're okay with it. What do you think of that idea of just preferences?
I'm persuaded, but I'm open to examining nature itself further.
Okay.
To look at the science of the science behind it, which I'm not completely privy to, but I should look it up more before we next attempt it.
Definitely. Unfortunately, our resident scientist is also busy. He can't talk. But one of the other arguments made for polygamy is look at nature. All male animals are polygamous, if that's even a thing. Maybe I should say have multiple partners. That's another argument from nature. But anyway, Dave, can you talk? Oh, you're at the police station. Dave is at the police station. He can't speak. Isaiah, your mic is on. You want to say something? You want to laugh at Dave with me or what?
I just want to laugh at Dave because I know he likes dinner, so he cannot afford to miss dinner for just one Zoom.
Becky has said penguins have one partner for life. Yeah. That is science. Those of you who wanted science,
And we are not penguins, Becky. That's the phenomenon of nature. We are not penguins.
And proponents of that struggle to find specimens. Kati penguin. Not a chechirala.
Penguin in Africa telling you.
Chairman was saying that all monogamous, but even there are some birds that are birds are not. Of course, okay, let's classify them as animals. Some birds are even monogamous, even some animals. So it's just selfishness.
and other birds are not monogamous. So you see now my point of preference.
Moderator,
Yes,
Kakati
yes,
ataba
brother.
kyali wakolera.
I have a question for Becky.
Shoot.
Becky, are you monogamous as a person?
Kisinziira ku performer.
I am dead. I am just
Take it,
dead.
ina magezi.
I am dead.
Ina magezi chini chana.
There you will be tomorrow. Please keep time. I am dead. Now, moderator, do you see what we are talking about here? For you, the debate between monogamy and polygamy has got all this attention because of the reward and punishment ideology that has been attached to either. Are you guys following? If you are in Christendom, and in that Christendom you belong to the Catholics, to the Seventh Adventists, to the Protestants, to Pentecostalism, having more than one wife is seen against the God worshipped in those religions. Therefore, polygamy is annoying and offending God. Now, if you are in Islam and Allah has blessed you, you are again offending somehow, though Allah doesn't take it serious, but you're offending Allah not to have more than one haki. And having more than one wife is in the Holy Book. So, the idea of polygamy in Islam does not start with you, it starts with Allah. It has been ordained by Allah.
So both polygamy and monogamy are ordained.
Both polygamy and monogamy are ordained, and therefore they have reward and punishment. Now, after you have attached that whole thing of reward and punishment on the two, now, you do not have a choice to make. Even those who have been monogamous are not monogamous by choice, essentially, especially if they belong to any of these religions. So this is what kills this debate. And you'll find people being denied as religious members because of the nature of their marriage. When I was still a Seventh Adventist, I was assigned to go to Kenya to preach. We were doing our practicum. I went to a certain area along the lake. There are Luos and Kisses there. Forgotten the place, I think was called Mohoro or something. I've forgotten the place. My Kenyan friends will remind me how that place is called. When I got there, I found Seventh Adventist church people, and some of them were even elders. But they had more than one wife. And Adventism advocates for only monogamy. But it was faced with a challenge. Someone has believed the teachings and the dogmas of SDA, but he has his wives that he has been with for the last 40 years. How do you start telling that person before you baptize them that you first divorce one? It failed in Kenya. At least Kenyans are here. I don't know whether it is still the thing or they reviewed it, and I doubt they did.
I'm told in that area it's actually normal for elders to have more than one. It is acceptable.
You see? So what has now happened to the reward punishment ideology in communities like Uganda. So this whole thing, once we take away the reward and punishment, we can have a sober discussion about marriage. But the problem is that since there's a book that I read, it has like 1,000 pages. I'm looking for the title in my head, but it was written by a guy called Philip A. Reynolds, and you guys could look for that book. It's called How Marriage Became One of the Sacraments. The problem that we are dealing with here is, moderator, is that Christendom is dealing with the phenomenon of the development of the Western Catholicism. Marriage became one of the 7 sacraments. Even when you listen to Pentecostals who are recent and listen to the Protestant church, and the Protestant church start by fighting the celibacy of Catholicism. But they did not fight the idea of turning marriage into a sacrament. Now marriage is a sacrament. It is part and parcel of one's salvation and the quality of their belief in God. This is why we have these discussions. And they're hyped like this. But unless we prune the reward and punishment on this practice of marriage, then we'll have a sober discussion on polygamy and monogamy. Then we'll start asking serious questions. Why do you need a second wife? Why would anyone take a second wife? Why? Now, Becky made here a statement, and we all laughed. But that is a very, very, very serious reason for a second man or a second wife. Those are the real reasons. Not my religion says so, not my religion forbids me to. So I think those are really, really weak reasons, and it kills this whole debate. But my time is up. I'm sorry. I've wasted a lot of your time, I guess. I'm sorry.
Oh, it's okay. It's been beneficial. We'll bring this topic back definitely in a wider context, and of course we'll give it enough time. We have about 5 minutes to go. Who wants to say something? Who is not at the police station, like Dave? Dave, yes, Muchwezi.
I'm suggesting if you could get one of these pastors, like how we always do, either Mare or Sempa, and we have him on one of those Mondays.
You want fireworks here? Okay,
no one is going to chase us. For us, we run our thing. We're not going to be chased from any dominion.
Okay, I'll look for one of those guys. It's a pity Benepo also fell off this call. I know where he stands. I wanted him to represent. Yes, Tom.
Yeah, I have a question. I'm not sure whether it can be answered now. If not, it can be answered next time we discuss the same topic. What are the reasons? What are the reasons for marriage, first of all? Why should we marry? That's the first question. Second question is it religious or societal or none of the above? That is my question, 7. Thank you.
Yeah, that will definitely come in the next discussion. We only have 3 minutes. We can't even start to discuss that. So if nobody has a katalekeka, I'll definitely schedule this for another day. I'll communicate. Thank you for making it here today. Our moderator was supposed to be Peter, but he had some issues. But I'm sure he'll be with us next time. So thank you for joining. Becky, thank you for representing the ladies on this one. Wama Miam with the penguins. Thank you. God bless you. I'll see you. Oh, you're a penguin also. Okay.
Yeah.
You see, moderator, the penguin thing must be understood that you are a penguin at home and a lion
in public.
So that
Wait,
penguin
dog.
was
moderator.
penguin
That
was
is yours.
Moderator.
Not
Tekisoboka
mine.
kubanga penguin yo temalako sasirimu olukumi ntaka olukumi.
anti era penguin enkazi eyagala sasirimu ekyo kibuuzo temuli kimala naye nga bano bamulangira Dawudi bo bajasi bakomande ebweru ewaka ba penguin sebo webale moderator mweraba
musule bulungi turasingane ku Thursday.
Olabye obudde buweddeko.
Balina zi machine gani bawoza ya mwe penguin ensi eno
Ba penguin musule bulungi bannange.